Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Good morning. Wonderful to be with you. So, want to draw a little inspiration as we do on Friday from our weekly parsha. This week's parsha is Emor to guide us into our practice. And so, this week's parsha, Emor, opens with God giving Moses a series of laws that are specific to Aaron and the high priests. These laws describe how the priests must stay pure and holy in order to be prepared to serve God in the Holy of Holies in the temple, to have that real closeness with the divine. And this week, we're also about midway through the counting of the Omer. This is the week, last week was Netzach, you might remember, the week of perseverance and endurance. And this week, starting last night, we are entering the week of Hod, its counterpoint, which invokes energies of actually accepting things the way that they are, and gratitude and humility. And so maybe today we can weave these things together a little bit. But going back to Parshat Emor, I want to draw inspiration from Yael Shai's text study, The Silent Center of Things. And the theme that she draws out from this Parsha has to do with the way that our most enlightened, peak, ecstatic, and spiritual experiences, you might say, like those priestly moments, right, where we feel so close to the divine, are not separate from our most mundane experiences, right? Jack Kornfield wrote that book. You might be familiar with the title, just the title, After the Ecstasy, the Laundry, right? Or there's the quote, the Buddhist quote, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. There's no getting away from the mundane aspects of our human experiences. And the spiritual path is not just about always being in touch with the divine and feeling connected. It contains the full spectrum of our humanity. So in this parsha, the priests receive these rules for a state of purity that they must maintain in order to fulfill their role of being in this intense spiritual closeness with the divine and making offerings, like being in this holy service to the divine on behalf of the entire people. And if they in some way become impure, they are no longer fit to perform this task. But as Yael points out, it turns out that even the Kohen Gadol, the high priest, was often unable to maintain such a lifestyle and such a state of purity for very long. Rabbi Ari Zivotofsky, a contemporary rabbi and teacher in Israel, he references the Gemara and he writes, during the 420 years in which the Second Temple stood, there were 4 righteous Kohanim Gedolim, high priests, and more than 300 others who did not even serve a full year. So it seems that the vast majority of Kohanim Gedolim, of high priests, did not stay as such for very long. Being in that state of spiritual holiness and purity all the time was a profoundly difficult task. Even the high priests could often not maintain that kind of purity. And what I want to offer is that perhaps they weren't meant to. We're taught in the Jewish tradition that we are actually, the Israelites, the Jewish people, are meant to be a nation of priests, like priests unto the world, unto the nations. And for those of us who are drawn to the spiritual path, there's often something within us that urges us towards that yearning for closeness with the divine. There's some part of us that seeks awakening, that seeks to experience the sacred and maintain that state, right? And yet life happens. A crisis of health erupts in our lives or the life of a loved one. We might undergo a great hardship in our community, or the world erupts in some other kind of chaos, and we simply cannot remain in that state of connection, that felt sense of holiness. Maybe it's as simple as coming home from a meditation retreat and encountering the laundry, right? all the laundry and the chores that have to be done. But our Hasidic tradition teaches that this ebbing and flowing and our state of connection is actually the nature of the spiritual path. It's not something that's wrong. It's not a problem. We ascend towards these great heights in our practice. We feel close to God. Maybe we cultivate some kind of great presence and awareness. And then we descend. We fall again. But if this is actually the very nature of the path, perhaps these low points, or even just the mundane parts of our lives, not just the priestly ones, are worthy of our attention and our love and our care as well. Today is Pesach Sheni, the second Pesach, Passover, which has everything to do with this theme, I think. There were certain persons in the Torah who had become ritually impure through contact with a dead person. And so they could not prepare the Passover offering on the day that everyone else did. So God established this day in our calendar as Pesach Sheni, a second Passover, to represent this second chance. It's really an acknowledgement that life happens, that we cannot always remain in that state of purity, that readiness to be in such close contact with the divine, that priestly dimension of our own being. And yet there is always the possibility to return. I found this beautiful excerpt from an interview with Jack Kornfield, the Buddhist teacher, on advice for practical spirituality. And I find this so helpful in those moments when I actually feel pretty disconnected from my practice, not so spiritual. How can it still in some way benefit my life? Like, what can I remember in the most mundane or challenging or seemingly unspiritual moments of life? And so someone asked him, do you have any advice for just like super practical spirituality that people can remember, just in their everyday lives? And this is what he said: relax. That's my first instruction. We have all of these things that we are in the middle of, whether it's tending to an emergency at work or a relative is in the hospital, or some great thing has just come up that occupies your mind. Relaxation allows for our natural response rather than the kind of tension and fear that can often control our lives. So relax. My second instruction is, especially when things are difficult, try to hold your experience with some compassion. Whether a crying child is keeping you up all night, or a car accident has just happened, or you're trying to get along with someone who's difficult, you can respond appropriately if you hold all of it, your own body, mind, and those around you, in compassion. And your life becomes much wiser as a result. So I love this invitation in a very simple way, beginning with simply relaxing and meeting this moment with compassion. And so in the spirit of Hod, of accepting things just as they are, whether we're in a moment of feeling profoundly connected or profoundly disconnected or simply mundane, I want to invite us into our practice for today to meet whatever is here in that relaxed place of presence, holding ourselves, holding this experience with compassion. And so I invite you to settle into a posture that will be supportive of your mindfulness. You can invite the body to soften, to relax. Invite the breath to deepen. Perhaps noticing if there's any tension or holding in the body and gently softening, gently letting go. We fully relax into this moment and all that is here. Meeting what is emerging in our experience, in the mind and the heart and the body, with a gentle acceptance, a gentle receptivity. And a gentle sense of loving care, loving compassion for whatever is here, just as it is. Noticing if the mind is wandering, or there's a sense of wanting things to be different than they are. And meeting that too with this acceptance, this compassion. Relaxing again into mindful presence. Meeting each moment with kind attention. Whatever is arising in the mind or the body, sensation. What happens if we relax the tendency to fix or change or hold on or push away, and just allow it to be as it is. We are willing to be with it, to be with our experience, just as it is. remembering to relax. Bringing kind attention and acceptance. Whatever is emerging. We come to the end of our practice. I invite you to take 5 deep breaths. You can gently open your eyes if they've been closed. Maybe give yourself just a moment to notice what is present, the body and the mind, the heart. We'll come back together on the screen here. Thank you so much for your presence, for your practice, and may we all be blessed as we enter Shabbat to deepen into this quality of acceptance of ourselves, no matter how we're doing, where we are, how spiritual we feel, how mundane, and feel in a deep way the enoughness of who we are. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Rebecca. Amen to that. A beautiful entry into the week of Hod and the week of acceptance and gratitude. We seal the practice as we do whenever we are gathered, offering an opportunity for those of you who are in mourning or observing a yard site, or if it's your custom to recite the mourner's Kaddish, to do so. If you're not reciting Kaddish, to stay present and offer your loving presence and support for those who are. If you're reciting Kaddish and like to put the name or names of anyone you're honoring today in the chat box, you're welcome to do so now or after we recite Kaddish together. And we thank Kat for sharing the words of the mourner's Kaddish on the screen. And if you're reciting it, I invite you to join me by rising in body or in spirit, and you can unmute at this time. Yit Gadal,
Dar Vitale Vitalal Riku Ram Shirata Pushpata Nekamati Ram Yama
Amen. Shlomo Rabba Mishama Lenu Yom Kol Yisrael Imru Say Shalom Vimru Yes Lenu Yom Kol Yisrael
Amen. Friends, thanks for joining us today. And if you're leaving us now, I want to wish you a sweet Shabbat, sweet and restorative Shabbat. Shabbat Shalom to all. As always, you're welcome to stay on. You can use this time if you'd like, just to use this container of time and community to stay with your practice if you'd like. And if that's helpful to do so, you could just turn off the volume on your device and sit with us for a bit longer if you'd like, as long as you would like. Or join us for conversation about the teaching today, and you're welcome to do that as well. And if you're leaving us now, we hope you'll join us next week, Monday through Friday, for this week-long series on Dayenu practice, on enoughness, that we'll be practicing next week all week. And look forward to that. I look forward to that very much. Hope you'll join us for any or all of those sessions, which, as always, will be live streamed on the YouTube channel, recordings posted there as well, if any you miss. So thanks to Kat for holding our space. Thanks to Barbara Stock, and happy birthday again. Many, many more, and good health, Barbara. Grateful for your sponsorship of our practice together today, and very, very grateful for your support in all forms, including being so dedicated in your practice and to this community of practice. We're grateful to you. And of course, thanks to Rebecca Schisler for leading us again so beautifully as we sit into Shabbat on Fridays. So I'm going to invite, invite you in, Rebecca. And if you have a question for Rebecca, I can put it in the chat and preface it by writing question in all caps. Makes it a little bit easier to keep tabs on that. I'm going to take a look at that. Well, let me start with this. Okay, here's a question from Lauren. It must have been terribly lonely to be a high priest. If we are to be a nation of priests, maybe that's why we are a nation that dwells alone. That's a very interesting question. I don't know. Do you want to let that percolate for a little bit, Rebecca? And I'll ask you something else to start with.
Well, I'm curious what Lauren means by us, the Jews, being a nation that dwells alone. I don't know if Lauren, if you want to say any more about that in the chat, maybe we can let it percolate a little bit.
Okay. All right, we'll circle back. We'll circle back to that.
Yeah.
I just wanted to start with that instruction, which is a really good one. Relax. Relax. And as I was exploring that today in this practice, what I noticed was I noticed resistance to that, or at least an ambivalence, like, oh, thank you for telling me to relax. No, don't relax. Don't let down your guard. And I wanted, it's just an opportunity to I think, to talk a little bit about working with the obstacles, and also recognizing the ways in which many of us are kind of hardwired, either by biology or by by life experience or by intergenerational trauma, to say, no, don't let your guard down, don't relax. You're not really safe. That is to say, yeah, relax. You say relax, but that's not really safe for me. In any way. So, for example, in this case, I was thinking, aware of judgment when, however you want to put it, either drifting away from the intention, or, as you said, being in a quote, lower state, like, I'm not feeling it right now. Like, I'm not feeling whatever I'm supposed to be feeling. I'm distant from my aspirational state of being right now. Whether I'm doing something mundane, or I'm feeling sad or depressed or grieving or whatever. And this instruction, it seems to me, is like just to be with that moment and not try to change it, just to accept it right where it is, with, as you said, beautifully, kind, loving attention.
Yeah.
But there's pushback. So maybe you could speak a little bit to the pushback.
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing that I want to acknowledge is that in order for us to relax, we need to be safe to do so, right? And often that's where that vigilance comes from. It's like, wait, is it really safe? Is it really okay to relax? If I relax in the presence of something challenging, will that be harmful to me in some way? And yet, relaxation is so important in so many ways, for so many reasons. One, just off the top of my head, is that that's really the space where healing can happen. And that state of relaxation and ease and kind of letting go, that's a space where deep relationship can actually take place, where we can kind of relax and soften enough to be receptive to another person, to the other, to let life in. That's really where peace can come from, right? And I think for me, it's really helpful to understand a little bit more about how our biology and neurobiology works, and why it is that so often we feel hypervigilant, and our body, our nervous system and brain is responding to an experience as if it's not safe, even if actually it is safe and it is okay. Relax. And this has to do with the way that, especially if there's like ancestral trauma or just our own traumatic experiences in childhood, but even beyond that, as human beings, it's the ways that our brain has evolved over thousands of years to pay much more attention to threats and to negative experiences than we do to the positive and to everything that's actually okay and going well. And that's because that has to do with our survival. Right. So what that means is that often if we experience something challenging or unpleasant, it's happening on a neurological level, that the brain and the nervous system is reacting as if we're not safe,
Mhm.
and kind of moving in that direction of fight, flight, or freeze and emotional reactivity, even if we actually are, right?
Yeah, can I actually just interrupt for a second just to
Yeah.
integrate this part?
Yeah.
Like the way that can manifest in a lot of different ways, but one of the ways I think for me it manifests, and maybe for others, is it's a letting go of judgment. Like relax, like don't judge this, don't judge, like like oh
Relax.
no, like
Yeah.
oh no, it's the oh no moment. Oh
Yeah.
no, oh no, I lost my focus. Oh no, I'm not doing this right. Oh no, which is this like judgment, which, and there's an implicit, I think, acceptance of, yeah, I need that. I need that voice to say, to get back on track.
Mhm.
And to say relax actually is to say like, oh, it's okay, don't worry about it,
Mhm.
But so that's why it's a little bit like counterintuitive, I think, to say relax.
Mhm.
The theory here, like as we like to say, people have to check it out of their own experiences. If you say relax in that moment, perhaps that will make it easier to come back to the intention
Mhm.
than this kind of alert system that's going, alarm system that's going off, that's kind of scaring us back into attention or focus.
Right. Absolutely. And so it's not to say that vigilance or really direct action, which again is more in that energy of netzach of last week, whereas the relaxation and acceptance is more the energy of pod this week. It's not to say that there isn't a place for that. There's absolutely a place for that. But that kind of direct active energy is actually often much more effective and focused and on point when it comes from a place of relaxation and kind of more a regulated, even on the level of nervous system, presence with our experience, rather than that place of reactivity that's just like vigilant and on edge. Which, again, it's not about judging ourselves if we are in that experience. On the contrary, when we find ourselves in that state of reactivity, we really need a lot of compassion and acceptance of that. And we find that when there's then enough safety, the system can unwind kind of on its own, but not through forcing, really through helping ourselves know that we're safe if we are indeed safe, which generally, like, it's something to look at, like, am I truly unsafe in this moment, or is it just this kind of habit in the body and mind that
right,
generally in the moment things are okay.
right, or as you said, like in the moment, to recognize, oh, this is my my nervous system is kicking in, right? And just to recognize that, oh, that's what this is. Actually, I am safe right now. And even to say, thanks, nervous system, for being online. I'm glad I'm glad it's online. Thanks for keeping me safe. I don't really need you right now. False alarm here. I don't need you right now.
Yeah.
So there's a couple of questions that are in that same vein. I think you've kind of responded to that. A lot of people are like, some people here are saying, like, I think commenting on that instinct that the voice that says relax is going to lead to being lazy or not responsive or is not welcome. But then there's a question, Harrison, Ricky are asking a question that I think in terms of like, diving in a little bit more deeply into this word relax and what the Hebrew equivalent might be. Like, what does that actually mean to like, I don't know what Jack Kornfeld means by relax, but how do you understand that, like the relax, and then there's the compassion piece of it.
Yeah.
And how are they different, really?
Right. Yeah. So I think what Jack was getting at was just acknowledging how so often, without even being aware of it, we're actually in a place of tension and fear, even if it's subtle. And like, that's often kind of what's driving our actions.
Right.
So just to bring a little more balance by like inviting ourselves to kind of soften and relax before responding to a situation, because we find that the energy that we bring to a situation has a lot of impact on how then it unfolds. Right. So it's like, if we're seeking to create peace in a relationship, it's really helpful to begin from a place of peace within ourselves as much as possible. And so that kind of goes to the second piece, which, I think practice maybe more helpful than relaxation is the concept of equanimity, which is pointing to our capacity to be with whatever is arising in our experience, pleasant or unpleasant, in a centered, steady, and present way. It's
Mhm.
the quality of kind of inner calm or equanimity that's
Mhm.
not so dependent on things being okay or going well. And it's something that is cultivated over time. In Hebrew, I don't know, Mark, if you have
I mean, I think we usually use, I think, hishtavut for that, which is about like, in the sense that it's, it's all equal, which, in other words, is not, it's, subtracting judgment from the equation. Like, this is not better than that. This is, I'm not struggling or anxious. I don't want to slip into the bad or the less good. But whatever it is, I can meet it as it is, just on its own terms as it is. Go back to what you said about the, last week being about Netzach, and it's also important, we get, when we're focusing, going deeply into one quality, it's easy to forget about the other ones. Say like, oh, those are there too, right? The thing about this imagery for Hod in this week of the, this kind of relax of letting down the guard of pausing, and people have a lot of synonyms here, maybe breathe or like balance or pause or Shabbat, and all of those I think fit really well in Hod. And then Netzach last week, which is last week, but it's still with us, is this contraction. Like I'm thinking about like that the relax is to soothe the nervous system enough so that it doesn't tense up. But last week Netzach is about like contraction. It's the contractions. Maybe we can understand this as sort of that space between the contraction. And we're not, so that I'm always in a state of contraction. It has its role. Yeah.
Totally. And I've been thinking about this too, how so much of really the rhythm of life is this dance between expansion and contraction. I mean, that's literally how we breathe. It's this opening and closing that is constantly happening. One thing I want to just offer, Lori's question on what's a kind, compassionate, respectful way to subtly invite someone we are interacting with in a tough moment to join us in relaxing in this way. Such an important question. And I think it applies to ourselves also, because if we're really not relaxed and we say to ourselves, like, relax, it's not necessarily going to work.
Definitely doesn't work with somebody else either.
And not with somebody else either. So what I want to offer is that, and maybe you can relate to this in your own experience, when we ourselves have that calm within ourselves and we embody it, and we take a few deep breaths in the presence of someone who is maybe a lot of times just our presence, just what we are transmitting through our embodied presence is going to have an impact no matter how subtle. And this is a neurological phenomenon actually called mirror neurons, where our nervous systems tend to mirror one another. And so I know for myself, when I'm in a really contracted space, and then I'm in the presence of someone, even better if it's someone who really cares about me, but someone who's deeply relaxed and can kind of just breathe, there's automatically a beneficial impact. And it could be very subtle, but so much of what we really have to offer another person is that the quality of our own presence. And I think it's true of ourselves. If I'm really feeling contracted and tense, rather than being like, Rebecca, relax, what happens if I, even putting a hand on my heart, like what, more of an invitation, like, hey, is it possible to relax right now? Like what happens if we do just take 5 or 10 deep breaths right now,
Yeah.
That's
great. Well, as always, people can check that out of their own experience. I'm sure people have many opportunities to do that. And please report back, everyone. All right, Rebecca, this was great as always. Thank you so much for leading us into Shabbat, and wishing everybody a sweet restorative Shabbat, and you too, and Kat as well, with gratitude, and to gratitude as well to Barbara for sponsoring us today. And really looking forward to being with you next week. This was a great on-ramp into the week of Hod and gratitude. So thank you so much for setting the table for that too, Rebecca. And we hope to see you all on Monday.
So looking forward to your Mark's intensive with us next week. We're going to get to hear from Mark. So not to be